Next thing you got to do is the thing that I think makes all the difference in the world. This is the one thing that turns teaching into training. Ready? You've got to involve students. You've got to engage the challenge personally. You've got to engage students in the battlefield of ideas. So how do we do that? Well, if this is my agency, this is the police department where I work, if I can handle every call by staying on the phone, if every call that came into the police department I can handle by just talking on the phone, do you think I would ever train physically? Do you think we'd ever try to stay in shape? We'd ever learn how to grapple? We'd ever shoot our guns at anything? Do you think we would ever train at all if we could handle every call without leaving the building? Of course we wouldn't. If you don't plan on deploying, you don't need to train. Think about it, folks. Is the church really that different? If we don't plan on deploying, there is no reason to train. So the thing that turns teaching into training turns out to be deploying. Make sense? So when I first started thinking about this, this is one way to learn grappling. Sit in the classroom and I can describe for you what you do if this happens, but at some point it's time to wrestle, and it's no longer time to talk about wrestling. We got to wrestle now. We got to get in the ring, because you're going to learn more in the ring than you will on that chalkboard. Am I right? So what we have to do is figure out a way to make this happen for us as a church. I used to think if I wanted to be a better youth pastor, I needed to study more, learn more doctrine, learn more, teach better. No, I could change everything in my youth ministry. That first set of students who walked away from Christianity in their first year, I could change all of that with a calendar. It turns out all of this changes with a calendar. I was very impressed with what your church does because I seen your calendar. This is a good church. The fact that you would even have a conference on apologetics yesterday blows my mind. And then has many people who turned out, something good is happening here. But it's rare. I'm just going to tell you that. It's rare across the country. If I want to know who you are as a Christian, I could find out by asking you, or I could look at your calendar in your checkbook or your statement for your debit card. That's going to tell me a lot more who you are. Am I right? So the first thing I did as a youth pastor is I started to schedule challenges for my students. The first challenge we just took 2 weeks ago. I don't know if you know who Josh McDowell is. He's an apologist. His son Sean's a friend of mine. We took 38 students to Salt Lake City. We do it all the time. Because in Salt Lake City, you're going to encounter a very sophisticated heresy called Mormonism, in which every term that we know as a Christian has been changed. Who Jesus is has changed. Who God is has changed. What salvation has changed. What heaven is has changed. You name the term, they've changed it. If you want to learn what you believe about those terms, one good way is to go talk to Mormons and try to dialogue with them. We take all these kids to the Salt Lake City Temple. We go on the temple grounds. We meet with some of the best Christian apologists who work with Mormons in the area. We train for days. We train for 8 weeks before we go. And then we put our kids through horrific evangelistic scenarios in which they're going to be on the temple grounds talking to sisters who are in the tours, out in front of the temple gates talking to people who are on the street. We take them to BYU, where we go into the food court of BYU and we strike up conversations with the students at BYU. You can tell in this particular photograph who the Mormons are. They're all wearing white and the Christians are all wearing black. Don't know why that's the case that day. I thought about it later. I said we should probably not be wearing black when we go in there. But anyway, but you get these 2-hour conversations about spiritual issues. And if your students are not ready, trust me, they come home that night, they're destroyed, because Mormons know their scripture and yours better than you do. And you try to talk theology with a Mormon who's been raised up through primary, through institute, through seminary and high school. These are programs they have in place to train up their young people. Our young people do not fare well. And they come home that night and they are crying about how poorly they did. And they're up till 2 in the morning studying their Bibles and studying the Book of Mormon, trying to be a better ambassador of Christ. And I'll just tell them, go to sleep. Go to sleep, because you know how you got messed up today? Tomorrow you're going to solve that problem tonight, and tomorrow you're going to get messed up a whole new way. So just go to bed. We can do it again tomorrow. But you can't get them to go to bed. They'll sleep 6 hours a night because they want to know where they went wrong. Now teaching is becoming training. But I have to take another trip once a year to Berkeley Because now we're going to talk not about theology, but about philosophy. Why is Christianity true relative to atheism? This is a different kind of trip. It's a harder trip. We put our students in front of atheist groups on the campus of UC Berkeley. Sometimes they're in large dialogue settings like you see here, where you've got 3 high school seniors debating 3 PhD students from Berkeley. You don't think those high school seniors are getting ready in the weeks before this meeting? You don't think they're taking the teaching seriously? It's training now, folks, because they're about to do this in front of 300 people, and they don't want to look bad. They'll meet with smaller groups, and then we also invite the local atheists like Richard Carrier and other people who are really against Christianity to come in and try to convince our students that atheism isn't true. I mean, that Christianity isn't true. And at the end of that, what are they doing? They're on the courtyard at Berkeley sharing their faith. When it's all said and done, the goal is to see this, is to see students coming back every night, studying, taking what they believe seriously. Because battlefields do change everything. They take teaching and they turn it into training. So the question is, how do we accomplish that as a group? How do you guys accomplish that? One last step I need to be aware of is this last step, which is not to be overlooked. It's nurturing. In the end, a fight can look one of 2 ways, and you have to be ready to take care of your kids. Sometimes a victory looks like a victory, and a failure looks like a failure. But there are often times when a victory also looks like a failure in some way. Every victory has got small failures. You're going to learn something, you're going to be pushed back, push forward, push back. We have to be ready to help our students. This is Stitch Duran. He's a cut man. His job is to make sure when the fighter comes back into the corner that he closes up every cut so he can get back in the fight. Well, this is what we do with our students. We have to help them. I had a scenario once where I took the first trip to Berkeley. I included a student we didn't train well. She was a friend of one of the other students. She only came to 2 trainings. When we got up there after the first day with an atheist speaker, she came to me and she said, I'm not sure I can pray tonight because I'm not sure there's a God to pray to. Well, if you as a leader have to know how to solve that, you're a cut man now. You're in the corner. You're Stitch Duran. You've got to help her come back to what's true. So you have to be able to nurture.